This is 2007's The Last Legion. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to Ambrosianus telling us about the legend of a sword that was forged for Julius Caesar, and he tells us that it was passed down until the line of Caesar ended. The sword was hidden away, and he has been searching for it for many years. Injustice swept over the land, and he swept across the continent to find the sword and the one worthy of wielding it. In Rome, 460 AD, young Romulus watches as Aurelius and the others make their way back to the capital. Aurelius sees the outfit he's meant to wear, and he doesn't have any desire to be there. Romulus sneaks into the tent to observe the outfit, and Aurelius finds him grabbing the sword. Aurelius calls for Basidius to take Romulus out to teach him a lesson about stealing, but it's revealed that it was all just a joke. Yes, because this is basically the ancient version of sending your child to jail to make him realize he doesn't want any part of this. Just then, Ambrosianus arrives to take care of the boy, and it's revealed that he is more than what he seems. When the soldiers try to manhandle him, he proves to be more formidable than anyone could have imagined. I'm sorry, but if someone turns a rock into feathers, I'm never messing with them. That's some witchcraft. Ambrosianus takes Romulus back to the Capitol building, and Nestor hurries them away. Odoacer makes his presence known, and he calls for a claim to 1/3 of the land of Orestes. Romulus watches from the shadows as he watches Odoacer get denied. After dealing with him, Orestes turns to Ambrosianus and badgers him about taking Romulus out of the building without a guard, and Flavia tries to calm him down. During his lesson later, Romulus asks about his heritage as a direct descendant of Caesar, and he worries about being killed like all the other emperors. Can you really blame him? Even nowadays, we all know what happened to Caesar. I wouldn't want that job after learning about that. The next day, Romulus is paraded around the city with the rest of the nobles and guards until he comes face to face with Orestes to have himself crowned. After the ceremony, Romulus realizes that he's the most powerful man in the world, but he wonders why he's still being treated as a boy. Ambrosianus tries to tell them that Odoacer is a danger to be feared, but Orestes calls him an ally. Orestes dismisses Ambrosianus permanently, and he takes Romulus to see Aurelius. He is now the captain of the personal guard, and Romulus asks to see his sword. Ha! Cheeky kid. He got to look at the sword after all. Later, Aurelius escorts Ambrosianus to the gate, and he questions him about the mark on his chest. He finds out that he was once an adventurer, but he's not welcome in the country anymore. After that, Aurelius runs into Nestor, who is a long-lost friend, and Nestor warns him about guarding the new emperor. And of course, the Goths end up becoming the enemy. Of course it's the Goths. For a capital city in ancient Rome, there are definitely not enough guards. I feel like this film didn't have the biggest budget at the time. The Goths storm the city, and everyone does their best to protect Romulus, but Romulus watches as his mother and father are killed right before his eyes. He tries to run away and defend himself as best as possible, and he grabs his crown in the process. Wolfila tries to capture him, but he loses the trail. In the morning, Aurelius wakes up to find bodies litter the street around him, and the city is on fire. In the throne room, Odoacer has seated himself as the new ruler of Rome, and he welcomes foreign emissaries. Meanwhile, Aurelius makes his way to Nestor's house, and he finds out that his remaining men are to be executed soon. Just then, Romulus is brought before Odoacer in chains, and Odoacer wonders if he really should fear him. Fair enough, he may be just a child, but the idea of the child is what's to be feared. Ideas have definitely proven to be more dangerous than any one specific person. Odoacer calls for Romulus to be killed, but soon, Ambrosianus shows up and warns him about bringing the curse of Caesar himself. After hearing his wise words, Odoacer decides to keep Romulus alive as he might be more useful that way. When Odoacer asks who Ambrosianus is, he gets the most generic answer possible, and he manages to get away with that answer. That night, Aurelius finds the emissary from earlier, and he finds out that Romulus is actually alive and being taken to Capri, which is now a fortress. In the morning, Aurelius leaves with the man, and Nestor tells him that he'll meet him in 5 days' time. Aurelius goes to free what little of his men are still living, and he gets there just in time. I'm not sure how much of a good guy Aurelius will be seen as, since he basically tosses this new ally to the dogs to save his men. Luckily, the foreign ally is pretty damn handy with, well, pretty much anything. Meanwhile, Romulus and Ambrosianus talk about why he left alive while his parents died, and Romulus finds out that everything Ambrosianus told Odoacer was just a trick to convince him to live. Soon, they arrive at Capri, and Romulus wonders if they're just destined to be prisoners for the rest of their lives. Back with Aurelius, he finds that his new ally has disappeared, but he never expected a woman. He finally meets Mira, properly, and she tells him that they should stick to the river the whole time. Everyone is amazed by Mira when she reveals herself to them, but she ends up being very handy with the locals. So handy that she punches an old man into the sea to steal his boat. fantastic character. Back in Capri, Ambrosianus gives Romulus a history lesson on his lineage, but after Romulus insults Wulfila, Ambrosianus is the one who suffers due to the child's immunity. Once the others arrive at Capri, Aurelius tells Mira to stay on the boat, and he tells the others to prepare to climb. Meanwhile, Ambrosianus finds out that this is the location of the fabled sword, and he tells Romulus to search for it in the temple. And there goes Romulus down the absolute worst trapdoor possible. It's not supposed to be booby-trapped, just hidden. Mira disobeys Aurelius' order, and she proves to him that he's going to need her if he's going to succeed. Back in the temple, Romulus finds the sword in the statue of Caesar, and he takes it in his own. Outside, Ambrosianus spots Aurelius and Mira making their way up the cliff, and he manages to break himself free. After taking out some of the guards, he helps them finish their ascent. Inside the temple, Romulus finds his way out of the hidden area, and he goes to kill Wulfila in his sleep. Things don't work out like he hoped, and now he has to deal with this. Luckily for him, Mira and Aurelius have made it to the top and are ready to take down some bad guy fodder. Mira manages to take down like 7 different bad guys, but it takes 4 more good guys to clear just as many once they finally reach the top. Something's wrong here. Then they just stand there watching her take on even more. She better be getting way more than equal pay. Finally, the whole crew gets together and they have to find a new way to escape since the bad guys are just outside the door. Aurelius stays behind while the others escape, but Mira goes back to help. Mira and Aurelius back themselves to the edge of the cliff, and they decide to take their chances jumping into the sea. Luckily, the others are waiting in a boat nearby, and they all sail off. That was lucky. The film does a good job of just changing the pacing of everything to make the good guys always be in the right spot. Even though only about a minute passed, they managed to escape the tunnels, get a boat, and get out far enough to wait for Mira and Aurelius. This film definitely has plot armor in the way it paces itself. The next day, the crew arrive on the beach Nestor said he'd meet them at, and he welcomes them. While he greets everyone with open arms, he tells Aurelius that they need to speak in private. It turns out that the boy will not have sanctuary in Constantinople, and everyone is standing with Odoacer now. Aurelius wants to drive out the Goths, but Nestor tells him that he can't back him in the Senate anymore since Odoacer has persuaded everyone. Now, Nestor has sided with Odoacer, and he wants Romulus in return for an army. Outside, everyone else realizes that something is wrong, and soon they're under attack. Ambrosianus and Aurelius manage to set one of the weapons on fire, but there's much more danger afoot. Soon, Mira realizes the treachery that's happening on the beach, and she saves Aurelius as he goes after Nestor. This all went downhill really quickly. Again, the pacing in this movie is enough to give you whiplash at times, but it manages to keep you hooked. It might not answer every single question you have, but it sure keeps you watching. That night, Aurelius and the rest look at a map to realize that they have no sanctuary anywhere except for the 9th Legion in Britain. All of them are fugitives now, and Romulus shows that he agrees with Aurelius' plan. In the morning, they start their trek to Britannia, and they seem to march through the same places that the Fellowship of the Ring did in The Lord of the Rings. The Goths aren't too far behind them though, and soon they reach Britannia. Britannia is under attack, and it doesn't look much better than where they left. Actually, this bad guy, Vortigern, looks more terrifying than Odoacer ever did. Turn around! Go back to Rome! Finally, the group reaches the 9th Legion. But it's abandoned. Are you serious? They can't catch a break at all. Soon, men approach the camp, and they meet Custonin, who tells Aurelius that his men are gone. He's actually the general of the 9th Legion, and they abandoned the Legion after realizing that Rome abandoned them. He takes them to a nearby village, where he shows off the shelter that they've built, but meanwhile, Wulfila meets with Vortigern about Romulus and the sword. Vortigern gets really interested when he finds out that Romulus has the sword he's been searching for years, and Wulfila makes a deal to let him have the sword if he lets him take Romulus and Ambrosianus. When Vortigern finds out about Ambrosianus and his mark, he makes claim of it since it is his mark that he bears. Well, this is either going to end very well for everyone or very poorly for everyone. This is not a compromising story at all. Romulus seems very happy in the town, and Mira seems to envy his happiness. She tries to test the waters with Aurelius, but of course, they were only going to flirt by fighting each other. At the same time, Ambrosianus takes Romulus to a sacred place where Vortigern marked him, and the prophecy is said out loud once again. Romulus doesn't think that he can fulfill any prophecies without an empire, but Ambrosianus assures him that there's more to people than their station given to them. In the morning, one of the children wanders into the woods, and she comes face to face with Vortigern. He gives her a message to tell everyone about giving up Romulus, and he holds other villagers hostage. The girl runs back to the village, but the others weren't so lucky. The girl delivers the message, and this just proves that Aurelius knowingly put the town in danger. In their defense, they weren't expecting a basic little village. They were expecting a legion. They could have just left Aurelius and the others at the camp, but they decided to show their faces. That night, the town gathers to decide everyone's fate, and Romulus steps up to address the crowd himself. He claims that he'll surrender himself to Vortigern if it saves everyone else's life, but there are still some who would rather stand and fight for their true emperor. In the morning, Aurelius and the others leave with Romulus, and it turns out they have more loyal supporters than they had originally anticipated. And that night, Mira goes to lay with Aurelius. It's about time! She's only been dropping hints since she came out of the river. Aurelius came out of the tent in the morning looking like a brand new man. In the morning, everyone is ready for battle, and Romulus offers Aurelius his sword in return for his respect and loyalty. The two embrace for a moment before going on to prepare for battle. When Aurelius addresses the crowd, he tries to rally them as best he can, but it kind of sounds like he's just preparing them all to die. Just then, the enemy is seen across the ridge, and more soldiers appear from the trees. And with that, the battle begins. Archers let loose their arrows from the outpost walls, and Ambrosianus releases fireballs from his hands? How else would you explain things you don't understand aside from being magic? The gates don't hold very long, and soon, everyone is fighting hand-to-hand for the fate of the emperor. The Legion puts up a good fight, but eventually, the enemy turns out to be too much. Romulus makes his way out of the outpost walls, and he hides amongst the bodies on the field. Soon, Aurelius' most trusted comrades are killed in battle, but soon, he watches as the true 9th Legion makes their way over the ridge as backup. It took y'all long enough! If they had just gone with them in the beginning, they would have won this so quickly. The battle rages on, and everyone's skill and determination is tested as they fight for their life and their emperor. Ambrosianus rides off to his hidden lair, and Vortigern follows him to confront him. It seems as though the Romans are getting the upper hand in the fight. Finally, Ambrosianus burns Vortigern in the fire that he started, and when he shows the mask to the enemies, Vortigern's followers flee. Wulfila spots Romulus amongst the crowd, and he wants his prize. Luckily, Aurelius makes it to him first, but now he has to fight for the right to the Emperor's sword. Romulus watches as Wulfila beats Aurelius, but he won't stand for it. Romulus grabs his sword and runs him through as revenge for the death of his own parents. Romulus looks him in the eye as he watches the life leave his body, and soon, Mira makes her way to Aurelius to check on him. Just as Aurelius seems ready to check out on his life, Romulus reminds him that he hasn't fired him yet, and that's motivation enough for him to live. Then, Romulus addresses the masses as he congratulates them on their victory, and he throws the sword into a stone as his way of making peace. Just an FYI, throwing an all-powerful sword away doesn't make wars stop. That makes you weaker when you end up fighting. As time passes, Ambrosianus finishes telling the story to Romulus' son, and he tells him that his real name is Merlin. Now, the story has come full circle with the sword and the stone. Arthur looks at where the 9th Legion once fought, and Merlin tells him that he remembers great men who fought here. Merlin admits that heroes are a necessity, and he watches as Arthur runs right past the sword that is still stuck in the stone Romulus threw it into. I might be a little dusty on my mythology for Britain, but I don't remember Arthur being the son of a Roman emperor. It makes for some entertaining storytelling though. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.